All right, so I was having a conversation with my friend here, Hanniel, and we were talking about music and what the relationship between music and science is. And I thought it was really, I mean, it would be really cool if we actually could record it, and hopefully it's interesting. We were talking about the guitar and what it means to be a musician, an artist. And one of the things he said was, in the arts, you should learn the rules, all the rules, then you should learn to break them. And then he gave me an example of the Beatles and all of that. So I will definitely be talking about that, and hopefully you find it interesting. So as you can see, we're wearing masks, we're socially distanced, and and yeah, and he's in college as I am. He's going to be an engineer. But yeah. All right, so um, kind of like to back up a little bit. Let's talk about like again about like the difference between like art and science and like what they both try to do. So like when you make progress in science,
When you make progress in science,
you're trying to find an objective. I mean,
revealing,
an
revealing
objective,
parts of an objective truth.
and we're not necessarily trying to prove anything right, but trying to prove
Trying to
our
become right.
become right, improving our hypotheses wrong. But in the arts, it's a lot different
Yeah.
because there's not such a thing as an objective truth per se.
Because art is subjective. How we perceive and enjoy and appreciate art is dependent on our perception of it. So, what we perceive as good, if we call that the truth, there is no reaching it. There is only guiding ourselves closer toward it. There's no objective truth in the way that progress, rather the ultimate prospect or goal of science is, right?
What would you say progress in the arts or in music per se would be?
So, music and art in general is iterative, right?
Okay.
People build off of the work of others. They do stand on the shoulders of giants in a way. Because art is like culture and history like combined in a way that the contribution that artists make, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? The overwhelming majority of the time.
Is Ariel not in his room?
Ariel? I actually don't know.
Okay. I'll get him later.
Oh, he might be doing safe locks.
What?
So like, he might be at like the main entrance. Cause he does safe locks, which is like you call them and they'll like make sure that you're not like alone when you walk back and stuff.
Oh, you mean the main entrance in front?
Yeah, the main
Okay,
entrance.
okay.
At least I think, cause like we ran into him like yesterday on the way back. So yeah.
Okay, I'll go check. Thank you.
Let me try to like better word my argument so that I'm
It's
not.
not an argument. I mean,
Well, I mean,
we're not trying to argue here.
it's the stance upon the stance I am trying to make, or rather the claim I'm trying to make. In the way that history doesn't happen in a vacuum, in the sense that events in history have a motivation, something caused that event to happen. It's pretty similar with music and art in general. art in general is very iterative. Someone is creating a work and synthesizing ideas based off of influences previous things that influenced them to create art in the direction that they're making it as they make it. It's why like musicians will cite their influences in their playing. Like the rock band Nirvana, or at least Dave Grohl, I'm pretty sure, likes to cite Zen Arcade, which is an album like that came before Nirvana got big. Like Nirvana was in like the early 90s, and the particular album that, at least on the Wikipedia page, Grohl cites, if I'm even correct, was in the mid 80s, right? So things, or rather art, causes artists to think in a particular way, and causes those artists to create art based off of what they think of the art they consumed previous. It's iterative.
Yeah, I think that talks a lot about the idea of there's no such a thing as an original thing. It's
Yeah,
more of a-
everything is a remix.
Yeah, so everything's like a remix that, and again, I think that comes back of learning all the rules and then kind of learning to break them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a remix, and when you make a remix, that in itself it's original because it hasn't been made before in a way.
Yeah, in terms of remixes, it is a demonstration of the iterativeness of art and of music, really, because it's someone else's work and someone else, or it's an original work, right, that someone else has taken their thought process and applied to it to make something new, right? I guess it's not necessarily like the best example of like learning all the rules and breaking them, but the importance of that like idea, the general ethos of that, is that art that has an audience that isn't just the person who created it, that isn't just the artist alone. Like, if the audience is other people, then the artist has to take it upon themselves to communicate to everyone else that they know what they're doing, that they're not just like randomly spewing information onto something that can record that information, right?
Okay.
So by demonstrating proficiency, the artist will have demonstrated that they know what the deal is, what the expectation of the culture is. So a trap song, I guess, might have a trap instrumental, but if they do something that doesn't necessarily follow the culture that has already been established by previous popular like trap music, right? Say like they add a particular piece of instrumentation or maybe some harsh noise or something new, right? Something taken from another source, and they synthesize it together, and they can come up with an innovation by defying a previous expectation. That's what it means to break the rules. That's a lot of information.
So yeah, so to break the rules basically means
to defy the expectation.
Okay, so I like that a lot because I think you mentioned that a lot of the art, a lot of the music is shaped and defined by the like the culture's expectations.
That surround them. Yeah.
Right. So like it's basically a very complex like feedback loop between.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think like using like a feedback loop would be like a great analogy because like you do something and then you get feedback and then you see what people like and then you kind of improve your craft. But I think going back to what it means to innovate.
Yeah.
And what it means to kind of fail in a way, right? Because I think so. Like in arts, for example, I mean, we know the Beatles of the Beatles, like you said, they broke the rules in a sense, but
well, with their early career, they demonstrated proficiency.
Right. So
they followed the rules,
and then of course they broke.
And then in their later career, with stuff like Rubber Soul and Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's and Self-Titled and Abbey Road and Let It Be, basically all of their albums, like later, they broke a lot of rules. They started implementing like much heavier sounds with songs like Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
They started implementing less coherent structures, like with I think Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and like Strawberry Fields Forever. By like fading a song out and then back in. That wasn't something that anyone did, but they did it. Or something like what's another song of theirs that does that? Revolution 9, which is basically like John Lennon and Yoko Ono messing around with a bunch of tape recorders or something like that, or a bunch of looped magnetic tapes of audio recordings from elsewhere, and constructing a kind of collage of sound rather than a traditional song.
Right, but I think so like first they kind of have to learn all the rules and show, hey, I know what I'm doing. Then once you show that and you have the credibility, then you know, and like people know what they can expect from you.
Yeah.
And you also know
you defy that expectation.
Right, so like it's like people know what they can expect from you.
Yeah.
And the singer know what they can expect from the audience.
Yeah.
So like once you have defined a feedback loop and they're like, hey, I like it, like like I'm like you're good.
Yeah.
Then you can define defy the feedback loop from the artist's point of view.
Yeah.
And that is what we call innovation, because if it comes from the other way, from the audience way, that's what we call a failure. Is that accurate or?
Not gonna lie, my head is kind of like having trouble doing the math, but
So yeah, think about it this way. We have two things. We have the audience.
Artist, audience, right?
Artist, audience.
Yep.
We got the feedback loop from the artist
Yep.
to the audience, and to the audience to the artist.
Yep.
So it gets to a point where they both know what they can expect from each other.
Yeah.
So they know the rhythms, they know the tunes, like they know everything.
The artist knows how to, or rather, demonstrates that they follow the rules.
Right. So like,
right? And the audience will respond by enjoying the fact that they follow the rules.
exactly.
But how do you proceed from there?
Right. So like.
How do you generate something that's fulfilling? Because the thing is, right, if an artist making a song once, that's good, nice, right? But an artist can't make the same song. That's how you get a situation like AC/DC, where they'll say that 10 of their albums are basically the same sound. That's because they follow the same set of rules, and they haven't really been defying them or defining expectations. They've been following expectations, but it doesn't innovate.
Right.
It doesn't innovate in the artistic sense because it's very much the same.
which becomes boring and
stale and uninteresting
and dull,
and no longer fulfilling. No longer something worth appreciating.
Yeah, I think
as it's made.
Yeah, I think in economics that's basically called the law of diminishing returns, which basically.
In a way, it's kind of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But just the idea that you can't follow the same set of rules like over and over in art, because if you don't innovate, then people will become bored and people won't appreciate it because they've appreciated it already. You can't make it again for it to be appreciated. It's already been appreciated. In order to make
the fulfilling diminishes.
You have to make something new, and the only way to make something new off of a general base of expectations is to defy the expectations, or at least one of them at a time, or something like that. Like maybe you use a different chord progression that's a little bit less consonant. You use a chord progression that involves more biologically displeasing intervals between frequencies, so that within this like pattern of pleasure you get displeasure, but the displeasure allows you to appreciate the pleasure even more
because you know what the displeasure is like.
Yeah,
therefore you can appreciate
the pleasure even more, right?
Which I think it's true in a lot of different aspects, like in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because music or art is a reflection of human perception, right?
Interesting.
Like science is the universe and art is how we perceive it. Or at least art
I love it, yeah.
Art is the history of how we perceive it.
How we perceive reality. Like
so science is the universe, art is how we perceive it. Because like you can say that this causes or X causes Y and Y causes Z and this particular event happened, but how we react to it is found in the words of artists and stuff like that. Because artists will be able to communicate their reflection of the time. If not the time in general, like what's happening around them, they can at least reflect upon what's happening to themselves, which tends to be motivated by what's happening around them. So in a way, it is a reflection of how we perceive the universe, regardless of which angle it's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I do think in some way I have the perception that the two are going away. I mean, not away, but they're going apart from one another. And I think the best scientists or the best artists would be the ones who would be like able to combine the two, and then find the truth in. I mean, not the truth, but their truth in their sense in each field. By perceiving reality or doing certain things from one field to the other and like jumping back and forth. And then, I don't know, I think that's something that I see that is no longer happening as much. Like scientists are usually just scientists and like artists are usually artists.
Oh, the specialization.
Right. And like I don't see as much people like.
That's a consequence of history and like essentially we build up this base of expectation that our like biological capacity as human beings has a little bit of trouble with dealing with that base of expectations. Like,
what would you say a basic expectation would be?
Mathematics, right? Like back then, say like in the era of ancient Greece,
Yeah.
calculus wasn't a thing.
Okay.
If someone wanted to learn math, they're probably learning basic math, arithmetic, right?
Yeah.
Maybe algebra was kind of a thing, but not like really.
Yeah.
Right? But like say at this point, we've gone past calculus, right? If someone wants to become an expert's expert in mathematics, they have to learn every single base of this huge history of information.
Yeah.
From arithmetic all the way up to the most cutting edge like areas of mathematics, of which has specializations of their own.
Yeah.
Like because there's stuff like signal theory and or at least that's what I find particularly interesting. That's just like a tangent, but I like the math behind like real signals.
Was
Because
that
it's like-
developed by Richard Hanniel?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
But it's just like stuff that I've been reading about. But
Yeah, I actually have a book that I'm reading.
Yeah.
And I think that he talks about coding theory. I think he touches upon signal theory. But yeah, I don't know.
Nice.
I haven't read it. But
And when it comes to art, right? They have, whereas like in the past, right, in the history, or rather far back in human history, you could literally do anything, and that would be considered how you reacted, right?
or like innovation.
That would be considered the innovation, right?
Yeah.
But if so much has already been innovated, you need to learn where the innovations are beforehand, like what innovations have already happened, before you can start adding to this list with innovations of your own. And that's why, like humans, or in the biological sense, we have to spend so much of our lives learning where all of these innovations are before we can start contributing.
Mm.
That's why you don't see as many people like polymaths who can synthesize all of that.
So
Because
you don't necessarily believe in polymath?
I'm sorry?
You don't necessarily believe in polymath?
Well, I mean, like, if we wanted another like Da Vinci, he would basically need to have both like, or if we wanted a person like Da Vinci, right?
Okay.
And all of the interests and things that he learned about, right? But at the cutting edge, he would need like the education of like 5 people, of 5 like doctorates, basically.
Here's what I think. I have 2 comments. So the first one is related to because of how much the world has made progress. Like, you know, like we need to learn like in mathematics, like we need to learn like algebra and then algebra 2 and then like geometry and then
And it keeps
calculus
going.
and then it gets more advanced and advanced and advanced.
Yep.
And therefore we are probably going to spend more time in school,
Yep.
which
Learning all of the rules.
learning all the rules, and then we may not even get to a point where
We can innovate.
we break them.
With just through biological
So-
capacity.
In there's
Which is why specializations have to occur, right?
Right.
There is no one person advancing all of mathematics. There are subfields of mathematics
right.
wherein people can advance with contributions within that subfield.
But and I think it goes back to the question about the expectations of people.
Yeah.
Because it gets to a point where you get to an age where the expectations become like too important, and you see like the innovations. But that's something else. And the other thing that I kind of had to say is that to become a polymath is almost impossible in our world today
Yeah.
because of how much you need to learn.
Right. In order
However, I think the next Da Vinci is way more likely to happen in the future
with like
than in the past. And here's why. And a very Da Vinci, and here's why. So I wrote an essay about how more knowledge is making us kind of
less
like dumber.
Yeah.
I mean, not I don't want to say dumber, but like deprived, like learning wise.
Yeah.
Because the internet basically gives you what you want. If you want to watch entertainment,
Instant gratification.
you will get entertainment. If you want to watch science, you will get science, and so on. So I kind of came up with a theory. I mean, not a theory, but I have this hypothesis that if like because of that, there's going to be like two extremes of people, like ultra deprived people and ultra smart people. We're gonna see like polymath in a sense, but because you can basically start like when you're like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And then you go to YouTube and I go to like online courses like at MIT or whatever, and like start catching up and not necessarily waiting to like us like waiting to go to college to take calculus and like linear algebra, and like those kids could take those things
like theoretically they could learn
much faster and becoming polymath. However, I mean that takes a lot of energy, commitment, and dedication.
Yeah.
Which again, it's gonna be very few people, but I think it's possible if you have the energy, and the commitment, and the time, which is again like you have to learn all the history from the beginning of the time until cutting edge, which again it's like a bunch of time, and therefore I think that's why we wouldn't see as many polymath in a way.
Yeah. There's
which is kind of sad, you know. Like I don't know. I like to see more polymath.
Yeah, I guess based off of our biological capacity, it's not necessarily something fit for the modern era. Not yet, at least, not at the moment. But I remember in my like world history class, I remember hearing the phrase, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's understanding the importance of history, is that you can't make innovations without knowing where all of the current innovations, the existing innovations are, or at least what they are, right?
Yeah, if you wanna know how crazy I am, so I spent the entire summer, like 9 weeks, learning about the history of technology.
Oh yeah.
So it was a course, like really good course. It's called like progress studies for like young scholars.
Yeah.
And I basically just for like 9 weeks, I was basically learning about the history of technology from like how to make like aluminum, like how to make iron, like how to make buildings.
Yeah.
Every technology and like learning all of that, and I think that definitely what I found most valuable was not necessarily how like the inventions in the history, which is super cool, but how the inventors kind of came up and like arrived to the inventions and like their thought patterns. But I do think like learning the history is important, even though it's overlooked in classes. In for example, I like to read a lot about physics and like science and all of that, and I find that when I learn the history, I can learn it much better because I can feel like I'm basically going with the person and like, you know, I kind of know what's going to happen already, but I don't necessarily know how he arrived there, and like he did X and then he failed and then he married and like he did whatever, and like like now because of that he found X.
The process of science, though it has a different goal in the end, it's also iterative. Everything is iterative because you build off of something previous. Something motivates whatever you do, and then you do it. And in art, right, you can't demonstrate that something is new because we like novelty. You can't demonstrate that something is new if you don't know where all of the old stuff is, where all of the existing innovations are. And I guess within the realm of the song, right? All you have to do to demonstrate your knowledge of where all of the innovations are is to just make a song that's reflective of that. Basically, like, that's something that shares the ethos of whatever is like popular at the time, right? Because the music of the time will be reflective of the culture and like at least parts of what came before it.
The expectations of like
The expectations, right? But the way that you break the rules is that you defy that expectation.
So like, what would you say are current culture's expectation? Yes, regarding music and what that says about our culture.
So, I guess a really good like example, like case study, would be like pop music, right?
Okay.
Which is
what would you say the most popular genre of music would be? Like rap?
Well, I mean like
pop, like
by the numbers, the largest genre in the world is hip hop right now.
Hip hop, okay.
Yeah,
So
but
like, I think
specifically what I feel like I can explain is a shift in pop music, specifically pop music. Whereas like pop and rap and rock, they can all fall under this umbrella that we like to call popular music, right? Which is basically like what people enjoy en masse, right? Pop music is specifically one set of expectations that you can like imagine in your head, right? It doesn't need to be concrete, but you know what pop music is. Right? It's internalized. So
like you expect a certain rhythm, like a certain lyrics,
rhythm and like
a certain musician
singing, right? The musical term for like I guess the difference between a piano and a guitar singing the same note, right? It's called timbre.
Okay.
Timbre is basically all of the other stuff that goes into something producing a sound. And it's the difference between a sine wave playing a frequency and like a guitar playing the same frequency. There's more that goes on in the background, and how we perceive it is affected by the timbre, spelled Timbre, right? But like if you think of that along with the rhythm and the notes and the melodies are basically like orders of single notes, right? Like following the major scale, progressing up it is a melody if you hear it in a song.
Like going up.
Like if you hear a song progressing up in the major scale, that's a melody, right? Like notes that change, that have a shape that changes through time, right?
And how will you call it if it goes down?
That's also a melody.
Okay.
Right? It's just